أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Tonight we're going to continue our lessons on learning to read the Holy Quran, and tonight's lesson will be the second part on certain rules that appear frequently as we are reading the Holy Quran. So we're going to go over some of them inshallah. We went over a couple last night and we are going to cover two more tonight inshallah. Our first rule has to do with the way that we recite the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here we have a long vowel. The second lam has this mad with the alif. So the first rule applies to how this is pronounced. So this long vowel on the lam is pronounced as what we would call heavy. So we say law. Normally when we have the mad with the alif, the vowel sound is a, the long vowel sound is a. But here, in the name of Allah, this mad is pronounced heavy, meaning law. We say Allahu. Of course, this alif here, this is Hamza al-Wasl. So when we start reading from here, we pronounce this with a fatha. So we say Allahu. Now, it's important to remember that this second lam here, this is silent, and the shad is on this. The first lam is silent, the second lam has the shad and the long vowel. So we say again, Allahu. Now we have to make sure that we pronounce this in a certain way when we pronounce the vowel as heavy. So one other way that we can pronounce this, some people might pronounce this Allahu. See, this is not heavy. It's kind of thin. It's kind of heavy. The vowel is a, but the lam itself has to also be pronounced heavy. So instead of saying Allahu, you see how that lam is kind of having its sound changed from the beginning of the shad till the end of the shad. The sound of the lam has to be consistent, has to be very thick and very full. So say Allahu. So this takes some practice. So this is heavy, but there's one exception. It gets pronounced what we would call light if the letter before it has a kasra and we read from that letter connecting it to the lam of the name of Allah. So let's look at an example. So the first example is, for example, like in Surah Qul Huwallahu Ahad. We went over this already. So here we have the word Huwa, then the name of Allah. So the way we recite this is with a heavy vowel on the name of Allah. We say Huwallahu, Huwallahu. Now our next example is when this mad in the name of Allah is pronounced light. So here we have the word Bismi. Now this meme here will connect to the shad on this lam, and this meme has a kasra. So we say Bismil, and instead of saying la, we're going to say la. We say Bismillahi. Like when we say the basmala, we say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We do not say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We say Bismillahi. So the rule is that when the vowel that comes immediately before the name of Allah is a kasra, then the mad, the long vowel in the name of Allah, gets pronounced light as la. Otherwise, it is always going to be pronounced as law. Now, this rule also applies to tanween. So here we have ahadun, and we learned in our previous session that when you have tanween and it's followed by hamza al-wasl, the noon sound in the tanween gets pronounced with a kasra. So now we connect this kasra, the noon kasra, with the lam that has shad in the name of Allah. So now this has a kasra, so this lam, the mad here on this lam has to be pronounced light. So we say ahadunillahu. You see, we do not say ahadunillahu. That's incorrect. We say ahadunillahu. Now, this rule also applies to the word Allahumma. This also has the same rule. So if we start reading from this alif here, which is Hamza al-Wasl, we say Allahumma. And the rule also applies when the vowel before this Allahumma is a kasra. So for example, we have here qul, but this lam here gets a kasra. So now we connect this lam with a kasra to this lam in Allahumma, but now the way we recite this vowel is going to change from heavy to light. So now we're going to say Qulillahumma. Qulillahumma. So the first rule is that when we pronounce the name of Allah, we pronounce the lam on it, with the mad on the lam as heavy, meaning we say Allah like Huwallahu, unless the vowel before it is a kasra, in which case we say la like in Bismillah. And the same rule applies to Allahumma. Now our next rule is a rule that has a special name. It's called idgham. And this also has to do with tanween and the nun sakina that we learned about last night. Last night we learned that the tanween and the nun that has sakin, when it's followed by the letter ba, then what happens to the nun sound on the tanween and the nun that has sakin? It turns into a meme. So now this is another rule that's going to also apply to tanween and also to the nun that has sakin. So when tanween and the nun that has sakin are followed by shad, the nun sound becomes silent. There's a couple of ways we can remember this rule. One is that when it's followed by a shad, the nun sound on the tanween and the nun with sakin becomes silent. Or you can also remember that this rule occurs when six specific letters, come after the tanween or come after the nun that has sakin. And these six letters are ya, ra, mim, lam, waw, nun. And one of the ways you can remember this, you can read this all together as one word. You can say yarmaloon. You can remember those six letters by saying the word yarmaloon. So let's see how this plays out in the verses of the Quran. So here we have one of the verses of Quran from Surah Al-Baqarah. Ulaika ala hudan min rabbihim. So now we have here in this word hudan, we have tanween, hudan, and this ya after it is silent. We have here hudan. So what comes after this tanween is the letter mim, because this ya is silent, so we count this mim as the next letter that's pronounced. And this mim is one of these six letters. So what happens? This noon sound on this tanween is going to become silent, and we're going to add a shad to this mim right here. So we're going to say hudam. You see, we're not going to pronounce that noon sound on the tanween here, and we're going to pronounce this mim as if it has a shad. So we'll say hudam min. Now an interesting happens because we have the same situation again. Here we have this time though a noon that has a sakin. Now the same rule applies to tanween and to noon that has a sakin. So here we have noon with sakin. What comes after it? The letter ra. And the ra is one of these six special letters. So what happens? Again, this noon with sakin becomes silent, and we pronounce this ra as if it has a shad on it. So we're going to say mir rabbihim. So let's read it with the shad on the mim and shad on the ra. Ulaika ala hudam mir rabbihim. Now we should learn this rule because some prints of the Quran will not always add that shad for you, and some will. As you see here, you have this shad on the mim. So if you can't remember the rule, you can't remember those six letters, Just remember that whenever you have tanween and there's a shad following it, then the noon sound on the tanween becomes silent, and you connect that letter that has tanween to the letter that has shad. So you say hudam. And the same thing here, when you have noon that has sakin and it's followed by a letter that has shad, then the noon becomes silent, and you connect the letter before it with the letter after it. So you say mir. So let's read it again. أولئك على هدى من ربهم. Let's look at another example. Here we have the word فاكهة. See, this ta marbuta here has tanween. Then we have the letter waw after it. وَالنَّخْلُ. And the waw is one of those 6 special letters. So how should we read this? We should read this waw as if it has a shad, and we should drop the noon sound on this tanween. So we should say فَاكِهَةُ وَالنَّخْلُ. You see, we should pronounce it as if it has a shad. فَاكِهَةُ وَالنَّخْلُ. Let's look at another example. Here we have wa man. We have a noon that has sakin followed by the letter ya. The ya is one of those 6 letters. Yaf'al. So what should we do? We should add a shad to this ya, and we should drop the sound of this noon. This noon should become silent. So we should say wa may yaf'al. Just as it's written here. This noon will become silent because there's a shad after it on the ya. We say وَمَن يَفْعَلْ. Another example. Here we have the word عَرَبِيًّا, and this alif comes after this tanween with 2 fathas, but this alif is silent, so we don't count it in this equation. So what's the next letter after this tanween? Is this lam right here, not this alif. Because this alif is not pronounced, this lam is pronounced. So what should we do? And this word is لَعَلَّكُمْ. So we recite this lam as if it has a shad, and we drop the noon sound on this tanween. So we recite this as عَرَبِيًّا لَعَلَّكُمْ, as we see here. So let's read it again. عَرَبِيًّا لَعَلَّكُمْ. And that is our last example, and that is the end of our Quran lesson for tonight.